This training will describe how to formulate titles. The purpose of the title is to identify the materials being described. They are also often used to describe the nature and content of the materials in the place of a scope and content note. DAX allows for two types of titles, formal titles and supplied titles. For the most part, processors must use their best judgment to determine which type of title to use. The rules for deciding which type of title to use are generally straightforward. However, their application can be challenging. You should have no trouble determining which of the two images on the screen has a formal title and which should have a supplied title. The image on the left is the cover page for the book The Battle of White Valley and has a formal title that you would transcribe. The image on the right is a letter written by Susan Nolan, and you would need to create a supplied title for it. If the series, file, or item appear to have a title, then it is likely a formal title that can be transcribed. If the series, file, or item does not appear to have a title, then a supplied title should be provided. Formal titles are generally prominently displayed on the materials, such as on the title page of a book or the header of a map. Formal titles may also at times be found in manuscript materials. Determining formal titles at the item level is not as straightforward as the aggregate level. Part of the difficulty is that there are different rules for determining formal titles for different formats. Resource Description and Access, RDA, provides rules for determining whether or not an item has a formal title. It also indicates where the source of a formal title should be taken from. All materials that do not have a formal title will receive a DAX formatted supplied title. In cases where the formal title is misleading or inadequate, processors may also use a supplied title. The decision to use a supplied title can be a difficult one to make. Very often it requires specialized knowledge of the materials at hand to reach an adequate decision. Take a look at the images on the screen. Which of these would receive a supplied title and which has a formal title? How would you make that determination? The item on the left is a shoe and has no formal title. The item on the right has the formal title Bota and is a piece of artwork created by Honza Novak. You would need to be familiar with the work of Novak to make an adequate decision about whether to use a supplied title or a formal title for this item. The item on the left is another piece of artwork by Honza Novak and has the title Zhidla. The item on the right is a desk chair and does not have a formal title. What about this stereograph image? Is the label on the lower right-hand corner a formal title? If it is a formal title, does it describe the image in a completely unambiguous way? Would it be better to use a supplied title for the image? Why? It is up to the processor to answer these questions. The majority of the titles that you will work with will be supplied titles. This has to do with the nature of archival materials. Archival materials are typically arranged and described at the aggregate level, and supplied titles are most often needed for aggregations. There are three possible segments to a supplied title: names of the creators, nature of the materials, the topic of the archival unit. The name of the creator segment is strongly recommended for all supplied titles. The nature of the materials segment is required for all supplied titles, and the topic of the archival unit segment is optional. Your goal in the creation of a supplied title is to create a unique title. This will help you determine which of the segments you should use. DAX 2.3.4 states that for the name segment of the title, you should record the names, families, or corporate body predominantly responsible for the creation, assembly, accumulation, and/or maintenance of the materials. The first step in identifying the name segment is to determine which creators have the most important relationships with the materials. Who was primarily responsible for the creation of the materials in front of you? Once you have identified the appropriate creator, then you should record the name by which that creator is most commonly known. This should be the same name that you selected on your Name Authority worksheet, or it should be the form of the name you discovered in the Library of Congress Name Authority file. If the creator name is unknown, then you should not record anything. You should also not record a name in the name segment if the repository is the collector of the materials. There are specific rules in DAX to help you determine how many names to place in the name segment of the title. If there is only one creator, then you record that creator's name. If there are 2 or 3 creators, then you record all of the names in the order of their predominance. Predominance is determined by the amount of material that they have contributed to the materials in front of you. If there are more than 3 creators, then you record only the name of the most predominant creator. Again, this is determined by the amount of material that each creator has contributed to the materials in front of you. The rules for families are similar to those for personal names. If there is only one family, then record the family name. If there is one family with 2 surnames, then you record both individual names followed by the word family. If there are 2 or 3 families, record all of the family names followed by the word families. If there are more than 3 families, then you record only the name of the most predominant family. This is determined by the amount of material that they have contributed to the materials in front of you. The rules of corporate bodies are slightly different. You can only record one name for corporate bodies. The name chosen should accurately reflect the administrative unit having the most direct responsibility for the creation and provenance of the material described. While the name of only one corporate body can be included in the title, there are other places in the descriptive record that you can create where the other names that the corporate body has had can be mentioned. When the name of the corporate body has changed, DAX requires you to use the most recent version of the name of the corporation represented in the materials. For example, the Geneva Steel Holdings Corporation records include materials from the Columbia Steel Company, the Geneva Steel Company, the United States Steel Company, the Basic Manufacturing and Technologies Company of Utah, Geneva Steel, and the Geneva Steel Holdings Corporation. However, the name segment of the title is given to the Geneva Steel Holdings Corporation as it was the final maintainer of the records of previous plant owners. The second segment of the title is the nature of the archival unit. If there are only 1 or 2 forms in the materials, then record both forms in the order of predominance. If there are 3 or more forms, then you will use the following aggregate terms: for personal papers, for family materials, for corporate body materials, for intentionally assembled materials. Optionally, in collections where one type of material predominates, record 1 or 2 predominant forms of the phrase "and other material." For example, letters, diaries, and other material. In this case, you would need to record all of the material types represented in the collection in the scope and content note. The final segment of the title is the topic of the archival unit. This segment is used to further differentiate the title and to ensure that it is unique. To accomplish this, provide a short phrase describing one of the following: function, activity, transaction, subject, individuals, organizations. The topic selected should reflect the basis of creation or use of the materials. If there is no name segment, it needs to be very clear that the topic is not the creator of the materials. DAX rules are supplemented by the Oral History Cataloging Manual rules when it comes to the construction of titles for oral histories. Oral histories use the following phrase: you will fill in the name of the interviewee. Formal titles are most common at the item or file level. When you are looking at published materials, the formal title will appear prominently on or in the materials. Formal titles may also appear on unpublished works as a caption or file title. The formal title thus identified must be meaningful and not misleading. If it is misleading, you will need to create a supplied title. Processors must use their own judgment in determining what is and is not a misleading formal title. When transcribing a formal title, you will most often refer to Resource Description and Access, or RDA. RDA divides titles into 3 areas: title proper, other title information, statement of responsibility. For the image on the screen, this would be the title. The following rules will help you in transcribing a formal title. Transcribe the title information exactly as it appears, though you may modify punctuation and capitalization as necessary. If the title is extremely long, you may abridge it. Typically, only the first word and proper nouns are capitalized in a title. RDA provides complete rules on capitalization in Appendix A. These rules should also be followed with supplied titles. The source of formal title information varies by medium. Hierarchical rules exist for other media, though there remains a preferred source of information for titles. If the information is not found in the preferred source, then you will have to consult the hierarchical rules outlined in RDA for each different medium to determine what the title is. If after following this list you cannot identify a title, then you will need to create a supplied title. Here are some final notes on titles. Don't try to make the title the whole description. That is what scope and content notes are for. Don't use brackets. Use the RDA Appendix A for capitalization. Finally, titles should be unique. If your title is not unique, you need to start over or move the level of description up. Once you know what your title should be, it can be entered into the Archivist Toolkit on the Basic Information tab. Additional details about titles can be found in Section 2.3 of DAX. If you have any questions, please consult your curator.